Waiting for the red light. All right, here we are. It is Saturday, December 30th at 8:05 a.m. in the morning in my time, which makes it what, 10:05 in the morning your time. Welcome to Timeless Wisdom. The Future is Ancient, episode number 4 with Statler and Waldorf, the two old Muppets who are up,
What are we going to talk about today, huh?
right, up in the cheap seats, heckling all of those who are going by on stage. I'm Joseph Mojo McCarthy. I'm here with my longtime and dear friend, Jeff Mo Bretches. What's up, brother?
Yo, Mojo. We're just kicking it here. It's New Year's Eve. All is quiet and just getting my groove on this Saturday morning.
Right on. So Jeff and I have recorded a few sessions here as our Statler and Waldorf characters, just observing, right, life and making some connections, hopefully, that makes sense. If not to anybody else, just to the two of us, and helping us kind of get a different perspective on what is life about and how do we navigate it well. At least a little bit better than we did yesterday. Actually, that's a good transition. So, Jeff, as you said, it's New Year's Eve, which means we have 2024 about ready to pounce upon us with all of its mysteries, and who knows what it's going to bring. And one of the things that I've heard say, and I've talked about before, is that I don't remember who said this, Jeff, but somebody said that you can live 40 or 50 or 60 years. Or you can live 1 year 40, 50, 60 times, where you get into the habits and patterns of the same old, and life just becomes a routine, kind of the hamster wheel. And I don't know about you, but at least at this age, I've seen years in the past that were kind of repetitive. Thankfully, not too many, but I don't want to just live out the rest of my life, however long that is. I don't know how long that will be, just doing the same old. And I know that's not the way you want to either. So as you face a new year, what does a new year mean to you, Jeff, in terms of, do you do anything different? Do you celebrate it? How do you commemorate leaving 1 year and coming into a new one?
Well, first I want to let you know where your quote about 40 years comes from.
All right.
I think it's an Alpo commercial. Isn't it the dog? Oh no, that's 7 years. How do I celebrate New Year's? Well, I'm pretty much like the average middle-aged American guy. I've scoped out the bowl games, who's going to be playing. It's so important to watch and support our overly priced universities in America. So it's important we do that. And really, though, you asked if I do anything different thinking about coming into the new year. And absolutely. I think about doing something different every day. It's how we actually get ourselves to get and do something different. And I had to laugh inside when you were saying about, getting stuck in our old ways, because that is a daily thing. I just look and I go, man, I'm stuck in my patterns. My current stuck mode is this time, the time change thing, because I'm waking, and my old age and my time zone thing. So I'm waking up at 5. Okay, so I'm awake, right? And so I got to spend time doing something till time to start work, and I'm not going to make a ton of noise and wake up the house. So that's limited to like reading and looking at the, surfing the news on my phone, right? Or reading something. And then by the time I get off of work, the sun's going down. I'm like, and I'm tired. I'm like, oh, it's time for bed, And then I'm like, well, here I'm sitting on my can again, wasting another evening. When am I going to get out of this mode? But it's like that in tons of areas of life. The garage needs to be cleaned out. I forget about that. The taxes need to be done. Forget about that. How do I get that motivation? That's kind of tough. But I don't look at the new year like, oh, I've got to make this list of things that I've got to do differently or new. I kind of have that running list 365 days a year. But I will say that turn of the new year, we do think about, how to turn over a new leaf, like they say.
Yeah. Yeah. The old thing is people create resolutions, although resolutions aren't nearly as popular, I think, as back in the day when you and I were kids, when that was a big deal. And part of that, I think, is just cynicism, maybe, of looking back over how many lists did I make that I didn't carry through, right? That I didn't implement for longer than a week or maybe a month. I think statistically, most people's resolutions go by the wayside by mid-February at the latest. And so I think there's something inside of me anyway that says, well, I'm not going to do that anymore because I don't want to disappoint myself and set myself up for failure. Because I know my patterns, and my patterns are get all these great ideas and write them all down, and then follow through for a week or two until I get back, like you said, back into my old patterns. I think this is a really important topic because I don't know that all of us are fully aware of how much power the patterns and habits of our life have over us, because it kind of runs in the background. We don't necessarily pay attention to it, be aware of it. But I think that's how we can get into the dangerous zone of living the same year over and over and over again and not trying or learning or growing or expanding. Um, have you seen that either at work or at home, where you look back and you're like, why am I doing that same old thing again when it's not really serving me anymore? It's not valuable to me, but I just default to the habit, to the pattern.
Absolutely, absolutely. I did hear Travis Kelsey. If you're listening in and you're listening in from like Mongolia, and you really don't know a lot about American football, this is a football player in Kansas City, Missouri. Well, if you're from Mongolia, you may not know Kansas City, but regardless, many of you might pick up on this. But
Well, they would
Travis,
know. They would know that he's dating Taylor Swift. That's who they would know.
so and Swifty stuff, this is a worldwide phenom, so maybe you guys know this. He said, I'm going to give up bacon this year, and then he said, nope, I take that back. I can't give up bacon. I'll give up mayonnaise, because he doesn't like mayonnaise.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. Bacon, how am I going to give up bacon? Yes, I have things that don't serve me anymore, but the pattern I'm stuck in, and it takes a conscious decision to try the new pattern. And oh my goodness, the topic is a deep one, because there's so much that goes into what you would choose, to change on what pattern to change, but why change it?
Yeah.
What should the new pattern be? How do you get there? Is there value in it? Is that pattern the pattern for the rest of your life, or just the pattern for the next bit of life? I mean, the questions surrounding making a change, there's just so many questions.
For sure, yeah. My friend Rick Olson, who was a youth evangelist back when I was a kid, he talks about change as like a trapeze artist, where you swing out on the first swing, and then you let go of that first swing, and you're waiting for the next swing to come. But in that few seconds between the one handlebar and the next, you're just there and suspended midair, however many feet above the ground, perhaps no safety net, and that feeling of, oh, what's going to happen? I'm going to die. I think that's a pretty good description, I think, of us trying to let go of something that is secure. At least it appears to be secure. But you can't get to the next rung, right, on the ladder. You can't get to the next trapeze swing without letting go of the first one. So the picture for me that works pretty good, just as a reminder of how important this is, Jeff, is on Half Dome in Yosemite National Park. There's no holds, right? There's no holds in the rock. It's too smooth for rock climbers. So they put these poles down in the ground. They have eyelets at the top, and they thread the rope through it, and then you can grab the rope on each side. So I was thinking of you climbing to the top of Half Dome, you stand at the base and you grab the rope and pull yourself up when you take a step, and then you grab with your other hand another place up on the rope on the other side, and you pull yourself up a step. But at that point, you have to make a decision. You have to let go of the first hand that got you there in order to reach up further up the rope and to climb further. Otherwise, you're stuck. You're end, right? If you let go with both hands, you'll fall back to the beginning. And so there's something in this metaphor that I think is really helpful for me to understand that even the stuff that got me to where I am now and feels very secure, it was helpful, right? Even those things I have to let go at some point in order to grow and to expand and to learn and to go into new territories. And I think part of my process now is learn to be very grateful that I had a rope to hang on to at one point to pull myself up to this spot, and but then be grateful that there's another one that I can reach up to, and then have to have this belief system that it's worth the struggle and the pain and the uncertainty of grabbing onto something new that I've never been there before. I've never been that high. Can I breathe at this altitude? Will I fall to my death? All the scary things that our head says to stay where you are, because somehow I think there's something in our psyche, and I'd love to get your take on this, something in our psyche that says, well, at least the known, even if it's uncomfortable or it's painful or it's debilitating, is somehow less scary than the unknown, which may actually be a growth or freedom or an expansion of our understanding.
The way I'd like to respond, Joe, and what you've just said is perfect for where I think we can go with our discussion this morning. I'd like to take that rope climbing and add back in that trapeze act, right? Because not only we can't go to the next without letting go, but even in what we do, and we get certain results, right? And we're comfortable with those results, but we're not getting the new results. Think about that trapeze artist again, right? They're swinging through the air, okay? And they're used to the applause because they're doing this really great thing, but they just keep swinging and they don't let go, right? And then they wonder why the applause is dying down, right?
Right, yes.
They're not going to get back to that level of achievement or level of gratification or whatever until they make that scary leap. And then when they do, there's the right. And then when he catches it, there's the right. Okay. Yeah. So not only do we have to let go to come up, but we also it's like, looking for the same results or looking for better results doing the same thing, right?
Yes, right.
So I think those two work magically or perfectly together. So what was the question?
That was a great response. Well, let's see if we can dig into some real life examples, either from your own life or something that you've read or somebody that you know, perhaps. Could you think of something like that in the past, maybe at work or with your family, in a hobby, was very helpful to you and it got you to a certain level, but at some point you realized in order to grow, in order to expand, to excel, or to even just get that feeling of I'm doing something new and giving yourself the applause of, hey, look what I've accomplished, that you had to let go of the comfort zone, step out of the comfort zone into the unknown. And it turns out in the end that was the best thing to do, but it was really hard to get over the belief system that the future's or the unknown is too scary to let go of what I've accomplished so far.
Well, man, I don't know. I've never gone through anything uncomfortable like that.
Right. Sure.
I think that every stage in our lives, we have an example of that. Just think about, I remember the first day of school as a kindergartner, staying at home with mom worked perfect for me. Why do I need this whole leave the comfort of home and go to where I don't know anybody and they don't eat when I want to eat or do what I want to do when I want to do it. And then I remember the first day of college. I remember just the anxiety of okay, I don't have this structure. Now I'm going to be more of a number, even though we're not a number. You felt like a number, but these were all big growing things. I can remember getting married 150 years ago, 27 years ago, and thinking, that I'd come so far in life only to realize I was a selfish idiot and had so much to change in my life. And I think, boy, I don't know why my phone is ringing. I put it on Do Not Disturb. And
I think your wife just heard you talk about being married for 150 years.
I guess so. Right. And learning that I had so much to change and so much to become, and knowing that sitting where I am now, knowing that I couldn't have become who I am without all of that, without all of that change. But I think there's two changes that that I would point to as the greatest, and one is in the professional realm, and one is in kind of the personal spiritual realm. But I've said this to my wife, to my kids, and to people in the workplace that I'm either mentoring or in colleague relationship with, and it's that every step of my career was letting go of the familiar and getting into something harder. Or something less known, and having to stretch. But every when they look at your resume, they want to see, are you graduating in your responsibility? Are you moving up in the world? But really, are you developing yourself? Are you getting more skills? And do you take more responsibility? And how much have you learned? And all of that. And I look at all the different jobs and steps that I've made, and what I learned the next level, and then the challenge of the next one, and feeling like I'm not good enough or not equipped enough, and going in and really hitting it hard and learning into where, I got this down, and everybody really happy with the results for a while. I'm just swinging back and forth. Right. Now I'm wondering why the honeymoon's worn off, and they've just come to expect those results, and nobody's just happy with the old results anymore. And knowing that I've got to jump up and grab that bar. So every step of the way is a letting go. Most salient recent experience of mine is in my current position. I was director of my area. We had increased volume incredibly. Things were really going great. But with a new project, with a new project this year that had some challenges, and me trying to work project and production and managing and all the different things. I was giving everything on the field, but I wasn't scoring touchdowns, so finally just had to say, hey, listen, I'm not keeping up. I'm just trying to do too much, and we're not getting the results because I'm trying to do too much. And the very next day they says, okay, well, you're not going to be director anymore. We're going to put this other person in as director, someone that didn't really know what we did. And then I just got this overwhelming sense of, oh my gosh, I failed.
Yeah, right.
Oh my gosh, I'm on the way out. Oh my gosh, they don't like me anymore or whatever. Yeah. And I had to sit myself down and say, self, listen, this is good. But boy, was I screaming. This is me between letting go and grabbing the next one. Yeah. This is me. Midair. I don't know I'm on the way up. All I feel is like this zero gravity feeling, right?
Yes.
I don't got my feet anywhere, right? Or maybe not zero gravity. Maybe I'm feeling the gravity, right? I'm gonna die, right? Yeah. Not realizing that I was in a good spot, and that this new way of doing things was going to free me up from a lot of the burden of organizational work, free me up back into the more development and more germane. So in other words, being freed up from the paperwork and the meetings to be the creative, develop and work in my main line of creativity and work. So it's actually very unsettling. In fact, yesterday, Chief of Staff called me and said, hey, listen, do you mind if we give somebody else your office? Now, come on, guys, right? Everybody dreams of the corner office, right? I have a really decent space in Austin and in Westlake Hills, really nice area. I go there maybe once a month. My pride and my brain is saying, hey, wait a second. Is this you losing something? Not at all. I've been working from home for a couple of years now. And when I go in, I don't like to go in anyways because I feel less productive in. And so they want to give it to somebody else. That's a good thing. But
Yeah.
you feel this kind of resistance because, hey, that's my office kind of thing. I don't know if that makes sense, Joe, but
It does. Oh yeah.
that's from my professional side.
No, it makes perfect sense. It's interesting because a lot of people like you and me, I think it's built into our psyche that change is, because it can be difficult. It's challenging. Learning something new doesn't come like overnight. It requires digging in, as you said, and saying, okay, here's a new set of responsibilities. I'm out of my comfort zone. I don't know exactly how this works, but I can either flail or I can dig in and say, how does this work? And then work at it until I become proficient at it. And I mean, I go back to learning how to walk. Walking at very first is just falling down, right? And then you learn how to catch yourself on the fall with the other foot little by little. And it's really wobbly at first, and you're hanging onto the furniture and onto your dad's fingers and all that kind of stuff. But eventually, in time, if you stick with it and you don't give up, right? You don't quit, then you learn that you can control that series of falls until it becomes kind of natural. It feels comfortable. And then walking can become running and jumping and leaping. And if you get to be an Olympic athlete, you can do things that are extraordinary that most humans can't do. But you didn't come out of the birth canal as an Olympic hurdler, right? It just, nobody did. Takes time and effort and energy and that willingness. This, I think this is where some of the crux of this conversation goes, is the willingness to say, okay, I've accomplished this and I am comfortable at this level, and that feels good, but I can't rest there. I can't stop there because there's too much more to learn, too much more to experience. And will it be uncomfortable at first? Of course. Some people call that imposter syndrome, and I think that's just because we're in a position of doing something that we haven't done before. Of course, it's going to feel scary, uncomfortable, hard. It's going to feel hard because it's just unknown, but hard in time with consistency and persistency and learning from the best of what they do and how they do it, and being willing to be humble enough to ask questions, right? And say, hey, and admit, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. Can you help me understand what it is I'm supposed to be doing so that I can get really good at it? And I think even that question is a hard question for me, for many people to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. That doesn't mean I can't do it. It just means I need some help, some tutoring, some coaching. Can somebody show me what needs to be done so that I can learn how to, how to control this impulse to want to hold back and to just stick where I know that I can succeed. And unfortunately, I think in organizational development, I've seen a lot of people get promoted to their level of incompetence, where you were good at this, and so you get the next level, and you're good at that, you get to the next level, and then suddenly you're put into a position that you are way outside of your comfort zone. Like, for instance, a good example is this: people are really great at the job they do, at the creation, the working, whatever the responsibility is, and then they get promoted to a level of management. Well, now their job isn't to do the stuff, is to actually to manage the people who do the stuff. Well, they haven't been trained for that. They haven't done that before. They've always been the person that did it and got lots of attaboys and accolades and, hey, you're doing a great job. And so I felt really good about that position. Suddenly you're in a level of management where now your job is to direct other people, and you just feel really uncomfortable with that. So I think you've really nailed down what we're talking about here is how do we, maybe the why. So you said the word why in the world would we push ourselves beyond that level of expertise into a level of discomfort that requires more work? What's the motivation there for you to take on a new level of responsibility where you could, not be as successful as you were at the lower level?
Well, grasshopper, this is a very good question. And I think it has to do with DNA. And I say that very, very loosely. I'm not a scientist, and I'm not even suggesting that there's a physical component. I mean DNA. I mean more of a metaphysical DNA, if you will. there's just a programming in us to grow. It's like a seed. You plant a seed, right? And it goes through some painful processes to become an oak tree. But within its purpose is to become the oak tree. It's not to stop as a beautiful acorn, right?
Yeah.
It's not to stop as a broken down acorn. It's not to stop because it got buried under the ground. It's not to stop because now it's wet and in the dark. It's going to sprout up. It's not good enough that it's a seedling or a young sap. It's not good enough that it bore its first branch. On and on and on. It's supposed to become majestic, and there's I think it's within our being to become that. Now, it's taking a step back, saying, why would we not run with that? Now, there's a lot of reasons why we wouldn't run with that. We've suffered a lot of things in that growing process that are not natural. Okay, because if every part of the growing process were done according to the natural plan, then the result would be the big tree, right?
Yeah.
So the trees grow. So the tree's growing, right? But then they bring in and change the soil, or they block the sun, or they do whatever that it stunts the growth. I'm thinking of we live in an HOA. I know, unfortunately, or fortunately, just depends on if you run it and like having power over neighbors. But anyways, I digress. We live in an HOA. The one we lived in before, we had these beautiful giant trees, no sun hitting the lawn at all. And then we get violation notices for having no grass.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
You got that glow in the dark grass seed? Oh no, that's not on the list. You can't use that.
Right.
Okay, so what am I supposed to do? It's like freeze, drop. Okay, what's it gonna be? Raising Arizona. Anyways, so there's a lot of things that stunt the natural growth. The shade kept the grass from growing. Was the grass not supposed to grow? No, the grass is supposed to grow. The shade intervened. Well, cut the tree down, you get some sun, and you can go. In other words, get rid of the obstacle and you can go.
Yeah.
But it's not that easy because these obstacles are not in the physical form. They're in our emotional past. Mm-hmm. Whether we've been put down, told we can't grow, told we're stupid, or we've been laid off or fired. I was fired once. I was laid off once. Both of those are traumatic injuries, believe it or not.
Yeah. No,
One because then now I develop a colleague relationship and wonder, is someone going to take me wrong and falsely accuse me of some kind of attitude, or is business going to go south? I'm going to get laid off. Why would I think those things? Why would I then act in ways to self-guard myself and limit myself so that doesn't happen, instead of taking the risk and growing? You see, I had those events that kept me in that spot.
Sure.
Why don't I just naturally grow? So now I have to deal with those events, take them and put them in the right bucket. Instead of in these are important files, put them in the file that says, I learned from this past and it's not going to bother me anymore. File.
Yes.
So you can't get rid of the file, but what file are you going to put it in? Right? So I'm going to put it in the file that says, I learned from this and I'm going to grow past it. I got to put it in that file. So now I can, so the reason to grow is it's natural. And because you are supposed to be something incredible, so keep moving towards it. And the why you wouldn't is because we get, one, our flesh, we get to the comfort zone, right? And two, we have a lot of obstacles that have come against us in the past that we don't know how to overcome.
Yeah, it's really good. As you were talking about that, I was thinking about the majestic redwoods in California, and you've seen them. And some of them have grown for hundreds and hundreds of years. The General Sherman tree and some of these trees that are there's, when you see them in person, it does take your breath away. Like, it just blows your mind. You see the one trees that have been cut down and they mark all the rings. And here's what happened, with the Civil War and the founding of the country or whatever. You're like, this tree's been around for so long. But the ones that are still alive, they're still growing. And many of them have burn marks and they have major scars and they're gnarled in some branches. And as I was there with Dr. McHarg from our college, who's a world-class, he's talking about all the things that a redwood tree can survive and how resilient they are. I mean, even forest fires don't necessarily take out a redwood tree because their bark is resilient to the fire. And in fact, fires can open up the seedlings to allow new ones to grow where nothing else has the power to do that. And I got to tell you that alone, I was standing in the sequoias when I'm learning this, that the fire was actually required to open up the seed pods for the tree to grow. And that still blows my mind to this day, because metaphorically, the last thing we want is a forest fire in our life, right? We think that we're going to die, but things do happen. As you said, we have drama and trauma, and I've been laid off. I know that feeling, and I have all my self-doubts. And so when the odds are against me, or it feels that way, when the circumstances are negative, I want to put out the fires. I want to be safe and comfortable, but perhaps there is something in all of us that in the fires of life, in the heat and the pressure that feel like there are enemies, maybe it opens up something inside of us that allows new growth, right? And I think there's a lot of evidence in my own life and in the history books, that says that some of the greatest growth moments in our life are when we were under extreme heat and under extreme pressure. Or you could go to the diamond metaphor, right? Coal becomes a diamond over time with heat and pressure, or at least with pressure. I don't know about the heat part, but anyway, back to the trees. I think as I look back at some of the most difficult challenges of my life, which in the moment seemed so scary and like something's wrong and I don't like this and I wish it didn't happen, all the natural feelings, I can look back if I'm willing to say, hey, what did I learn and how did I grow there? And perhaps that was a gift, that fire that raged through my life at that moment was exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it to be able to break open the new life within me and start something new and grow in a way that I wouldn't have any other way.
Exactly. That I don't want to go squirrel on you, but that makes me think, is it possible, and in context and without taking this too far, is it possible that if we lit our own fires, we wouldn't have to have fires lit under us?
Ooh, that's a great question. Yeah.
And I don't mean self-sabotage,
right. Yeah.
But I do know, and sometimes I know it's because it can happen when you've made provision ahead of time. But you see people who leave great careers with nothing ready, or with something lesser in our mind.
Right.
Maybe it's lesser because it pays less, or something like that, or maybe it's lesser because it's in a different field or something. And someone specifically chooses to do that, right? Maybe that's lighting a fire, knowing that a change needs to happen. That person may be displaying even more wisdom,
Yeah, well, I remember that Tiger Woods, at the peak of his career, when he was considered not just the best golfer of his generation, but the best golfer of all time, fired his swing coach. And most of the world thought, even the golf world thought, he was insane, because why? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's the whole idea that comes to mind. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And he's at the peak of his career and the best in the world. He's winning the tournaments every time, all the major tournaments. And why in the world at that point in particular would he fire his swing coach? And my understanding, at least my perspective of it and the stories that I've read, is that he had this understanding that many of us suppress. And that is, if I keep doing the same thing the same way, I'll get the same results. And there are great golfers all around me who are hungry and they are learning and growing. And if I don't continue to get better, even if I am considered the best at what I do, if I don't continue to get better, eventually someone's going to surpass me. And then I'm just going to stall. I'm going to stall at that plateau. And I think there's I think that's rare, but it's a wisdom that we can grab onto and say, wow, I wonder, right, for me, where are the places in my life where I've plateaued and I'm pretty comfortable at this plateau because I'm good at what that is. But like you said, in time, that honeymoon starts to fade, and now it's not as rewarding, it's not as exciting, it's certainly not challenging anymore. And the natural part of me, my humanity, says I want to grow, I want to expand, I want to learn, I want to become more than I have become so far. Right? Does that resonate with you?
Oh, absolutely. And then there are some theologians that take Genesis to say, when it says, go multiply, fill the earth, and take charge of things and develop things, that was in a sense, a passing on to humanity to build themselves up and to build the world up. Now, as far as how far you can take that, I can't say, but I think even from the very beginning, we are told to go multiply, have dominion, and develop. And so I don't think we'd been told that if that wasn't part of our DNA, part of our reason to be, if you will. So I'm in total agreement, in agreement with you on that.
So let's talk a little bit about how do we navigate, negotiate inevitable loss in our life, and can we reframe it in our perspective to say that loss is actually a gift that gives room for picking up something new, or growing, or learning something new. So in many ways, you could say metaphorically, 2023 is about to die. It's almost done. It's, the old year is going down, and the new year, the little baby that we see, the symbol for the new year, is coming up. And we've made a cycle around the sun, so I understand why we celebrate the year. But I think there's an invitation in all this. Even when the sun goes down and we go to sleep, we never know for sure if we're going to wake up the next morning, right? You're not promised the next breath. We don't know how much time we've got. But I think the question I'm trying to dig at is there a perspective that we can take that says that we don't have to hang on to everything, that actually letting go and saying goodnight or saying goodbye or allowing something to die is part of the natural growth pattern, right? Where the stuff that is dying actually becomes the fertilizer and the nutrients for the soil for new growth in our life, from day to day, from year to year, from a kind of era in our life to the next.
Well, let's just say that our existence is a guarantee of change and death. I used to say that the number one cause of death is that the heart stopped. I then came to realize that the number one cause of death is being born, because you can't die if you're not born. And the expectation is that a human being won't live in the physical forever, and so the death will come. And then if we try to make sense of that knowledge, it's a tough go. I also want to point to the fact that loss and death of something doesn't mean that activity is a good. It is a, if your house burns down, oh good, my house burnt down. No, it's not good that your house burnt down. What's good is the way you're going to grow from it because of what you do, because it burned down. Now,
how you respond. Right.
That is right. And so you and I have been influenced by a book that we're going to talk about in a future session, right? Called
Sure.
Anti-Fragile.
Yeah.
Okay? And I'm going to pretend like I remember the author's name, but watch my eyes.
Nassim Taleb.
Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Okay, yeah, right. So he talks about black swan events and about catastrophic events and how being fragile, we don't want to be fragile. And we think that the apex of development is to be resilient, when actually there's a much higher peak to be gained, which is anti-fragility, which says what? It says that you thrive on a catastrophic event. Now, that is counterintuitive to begin with until you study and get into that. And we can talk about that another time. But it's not that the catastrophe is what is good. It's what do we see in that, what do we take advantage of in that catastrophe? And when I say advantage of, I don't mean that in a negative scheming type of fashion. I mean, what do we do in light of that loss to rebuild and to make us better?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think that's the reason, and that's the way to look at those things. As I've had this, it wasn't a great experience, but I'm going to profit. How am I going to profit from it?
Yeah. Whew, that's a good one. Anti-fragile is a word that the author made up because he didn't have a good word in English that described how when things go awry, yes, you can either get shattered by it, which would be fragile, or you can survive it, which would be resilient. But he makes this case for being stronger, being better as a result. And again, I love that you've clarified that the catastrophe itself isn't something to be grateful for, but the opportunity to respond to it. And so this is where the word responsibility has taken on a new meaning for me, even in this last year. Responsibility, I often associated with blame, that if I'm responsible, then I'm the one to blame. Well, another way to frame that is responsibility is just my ability to respond. So the blame game isn't really beneficial to me or to anybody else. Whose fault is it? Okay, I can identify whose fault that something happened, or maybe I can't. But what's really beneficial is, what do I do with that now? Okay, here's what's happened. And maybe I can figure out somebody to blame, maybe I can't, but that won't be as helpful as what is my ability to respond to whatever has happened, regardless of who was to blame. So for me, when I look back at some of the more traumatic events of my life, when I was a victim, as a teenager, and I didn't know what was going on or why it was going on, and I certainly could point who to blame in that situation. But it took me a long time in my life to look back and say, just pointing out who the person was to blame isn't helping you grow, right? Isn't helping you grow. You're still kind of stuck back in that pain. So what I had to do in order to get through that and get past it, and then kind of absorb that loss and to become a nutrient in my life, was to say, okay, what do I do with what has happened? Rather than just saying what happened and who to blame, what's my responsibility? What's now my ability to respond to that? And so that was therapy, and it was facing my pain and going back and caring for my younger self in a way that needed to be done, that hadn't been done yet. And a healing began, a process began, where now all of that isn't baggage in my life, right? The trauma of what happened when I was a victim is no longer baggage. And when I was just blaming somebody, I was just carrying that baggage along, and it was very heavy, and it was a struggle, and it affected my understanding of myself and my relationships and my work at home, etc. But once I stopped and I faced it, and I said, okay, that did happen. I can't make it unhappen. I can't pretend like it didn't happen. I can't pretend like it didn't affect me. What do? It's my ability to respond, to go back and to pour love and healing and prayer and get the help that I needed to heal up those wounds, so that now I do carry the scar, but the scar is no longer bleeding. It's no longer seeping. It's no longer taking life out of me. It's just something I can point to and say, hey, look at, I had a shark attack, right? I got the shark bite teeth right here, but now it doesn't, not only does it not keep me from growing, it's actually kind of a trophy now. I could say, look what I've survived. And if I can survive that, and grow from it, well, bring it on. I can face anything through faith and through determination and through the responsibility, the ability to respond to whatever life may bring. I can't control the external circumstances, but I do have the invitation, right, to control my response to whatever is happening outside of me by cultivating and nurturing what's happening inside of me.
And I'm so glad you got the help out of there.
Yeah, seriously, got the help out of that. That's a great way to put it.
Well, and if you think about it, when from the time that the catastrophic or painful event happened to the time that you were able to deal positively with it, right?
Yeah.
There was a span of time, right?
Oh yeah.
During that time, you were developing your responsibility, your ability to respond. You were developing it. Yes. How do you develop it? Through understanding, through knowledge and wisdom. Okay. Somebody, whether it was somebody who helped you come and talk to you, whether it was you going to talk to somebody, whether it was reading, whether it was praying, you were learning then how to respond to it. So a lot of times when the event happens, we feel damned by the event because we don't know what to do with it. Yeah. And if we sit there and just hold that, right, we're not going to learn the ability to respond, the responsibility. And no one's going to fault you for having gone through that event, right? And no one's even going to blame you or fault you if you sit there and hold on to it, because love covers that, right? But the ability to move past that is learning. And we all know, or at least it's what you and I have discussed in the past, we don't have all knowledge. We have something to learn in every area of our life. And so when that happens, you can't beat yourself down. It happened. You can't beat yourself for staying in that position. But what you've got to realize is that what we're talking about today, that position is not the forever position. The new position is not something that you may already know, but it's the decision to do the things to get the help out of there.
Yes, right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. It took me right back to the tree metaphor again. When the fire rages through the forest, the tree didn't start the fire, right? And the tree can't actually run away. It's grounded, which actually is a good thing. I could dig into that metaphor as well. But it stands and withstands the fire that's raging, and then the heat that opens up the seed pod. So when the seed pod opens up because of the fire rage through, it doesn't open up and it's a giant tree. And now we're starting over again. It's a little seed that has to go down into the ground and become a seedling and all the things that we've talked about. It's a renewal, but it's also a starting over. And I think there's some resistance inside of me that doesn't want to have to start over again, right? Because look how far I've come. The last thing I want to do is start over. But I think there is evidence in nature that that's actually not a bad thing. That's an opportunity to start something new and not expect that it's going to be mature within a day or a week or even a year. But what I start new is I'm just planting a new seed, and I got to nurture it and prune it sometimes and allow the time, right, the gift of time, to understand that, hey, if whatever I'm willing to start now, if I nurture it long enough and I tend to it, then it can bear fruit at some point in the future. And I may not know how long that is, but am I willing, right? This goes back to that why question. Why am I willing, and why? What's the benefit to starting something new when the fire rages through my life, and allowing the time? Even, so time is a funky thing, because now at 57, I'm not at midlife anymore, unless I think I'm going to live to 114, which I guess that's possible, but I'm past midlife. So you start looking at, well, I don't know how much time I've got. So do I really want to start something new at age 57, whether that's career-wise, hobby-wise, relationship, whatever that might be. But I think there's this invitation, Jeff, and I think you're describing it really well, that when the crap hits the fan, I can just give up, or I can let it sit there and stink, or I can somehow, with God's grace and the help of friends, turn that into fertilizer and build it into the soil of my life and say, okay, what can grow from this, right?
Well, and that is a very salient point and a segue into the seasons of life.
Yeah.
Because what you just said is, if we expect that after the midlife crisis that there's no new beginnings, we're missing some other information. That other information is that every stage is new. Every stage brings its own stuff that hits the fan, right?
Yes.
Every stage is going to have a dying and a remaking. Every single stage. Not to go into too much detail, but my father just lost his wife a couple of weeks ago, my mother. He has to figure out now what stage he's in and how to operate in that stage. It was catastrophic in the sense that anytime you lose somebody, it's a big hit. It wasn't catastrophic in the sense of cycle of life because she was almost 90, right? But for him to say, I am nothing more because I'm 88 and I don't have a spouse and I can't get around very good. Why is that to say that there's no new beginning, or that something doesn't hit the fan and that we go from that point to the next point? Because every single event is a new beginning. Every day is a new beginning. Every season of life is a new beginning. And we just have to understand that and know that. We don't have a ton of time left. I do want to get a comment in there before I forget it, and we probably don't have time to develop it, so shame on me maybe, but we realize the events that have happened. We make that decision to move forward. How do we keep that momentum? Day 3, it's hard. Day 4, it's hard. How do we keep it? Well, that's where we rely on an outside source, because there is help to keep that momentum. And that help comes from our relationship with God and the Holy Spirit working in us to give us the strength. That motivation comes through our friends and our family who encourage us, because they I'm hearing what I think is feedback. I'm not sure if
I've got somebody's out there doing the lawn. It's making a lot of noise. So
I thought,
ignore the leaf blower out there. I'll see. I'll mute while you talk. Keep talking.
So in our relationship, we can encourage each other. We continue with that motivation, that onward motivation, with some help. We get by with a little help from our friends, and that help is encouragement from others. It's plugging in and being connected with others, sharing with others, and keeping that going. But God wants you to succeed. Your Creator, the one who loves you and gives you life and breath, is still a source. He hasn't just left you just because you're 57 or whatever you are, 88, and lost your wife. He's there with that motivation to continue to keep on going, because quite honestly, we get like you've kind of mentioned before, we hit that issue, that wall, or that event, that catastrophic event. We have that choice. Am I just going to sit here and go, well, it's over? Well, when you see somebody in the news, whether it's tragically a young person being bullied and then taking their life, or whether it's a veteran of the military who's suffering PTSD and they've taken their life, what happens in your heart when you see that story? Your heart melts and you go, I wish I could have been there for that person, because I wish I could have told them they're going to make it. You're going to make it through. This is how. Because, and maybe that would have helped. Maybe it wouldn't have. but we tend to see the problem as bigger than what we're ever going to be able to handle, and then we should just give up. And the truth is different than the feeling, and the way but we're relational people, and helping each other, and relying on, I guess you can't rely if somebody's not going to come and help you, but relationship with God and relationship with others helps to keep that moving forward. If you say, I'm going to lose weight, and you say, hey, I lost 5 pounds, and your buddy goes, that's awesome, you lost 5 pounds. You only have 300 to go, but they don't say that. They say, you lost 5 pounds. Ooh, that's awesome. Let's go celebrate with cake. No, they don't say that. They say, you lost 5 pounds. Awesome. Great. What can I do to help? Keep going. And then you want to keep going, right? I know that's maybe a silly example compared to bullying of a young person, but I think it's along the same lines.
Yeah, no, it's very good. It's interesting because you backed into, I think unintentionally, just the two basic things. When Jesus himself was asked by the leadership of the church at the time, of all these laws and that we're supposed to keep to please God, which one's the most important? And they're trying to trap him. And Jesus says, well, if you love your neighbor, by the way, everybody's your neighbor, and as you love yourself, right? Because you're going to take care of yourself, and you love God, well, then all the other stuff falls into line. And I love what you were saying, that sometimes we have to be willing, actually a lot of times we have to be willing to say, hey, I could use a little help here, right? I maybe we just need a word of encouragement. Maybe I just need someone to say, hey, losing 5 pounds is great, but don't stop there, right? Let's celebrate what you've done, but don't stop there. Sometimes we have to do that for ourselves because we aren't surrounded necessarily with a team of cheerleaders. But I believe that, especially as guys, we're kind of raised in a culture where we don't ask for help, we don't ask for directions because of our pride. But if we're willing to ask and say, hey, can you give me a little feedback? Am I on the right track? Just someone to say, hey, you got this. You can, and maybe I can help, maybe I can't, but at the very least, I can celebrate the wins that you've got and say, don't give up, don't quit. Or as Winston Churchill famously said, he said, when you're going through hell, keep going, right? Don't stop there. This is a fabulous discussion, and I do know that we can dig into a lot of this, going lots of different directions. And by the way, I just wanted to say, I loved your mom dearly, and I'm sorry for her loss. And I do celebrate, as you and your family have, celebrate the fact that she's freed from the bonds of her body and is now doing something glorious, right? And probably cheering us on. I think there's a hint in the Bible that the saints that have gone on before us, they are cheering us on. Maybe we can't see them, maybe we can't hear their voices, but we can believe, right, that the ones that have gone on before us, they want what's best for us. They want us to thrive. They want us to grow. They want us to maximize our potential and become that oak tree, that glorious oak tree, before our time comes to become the compost for the next generation. And that's, I think that's a reminder to me too, that my life isn't just about growing into become a great tree. It's what does a tree do? It provides shade. It provides a place for people to climb, and eventually it becomes nutrients for the soil of the next generation. And so as the cycle of the year comes to a close, the cycle of our days, even the cycle of our breath, inhaling and exhaling, there's always something that we receive when you inhale, but you can't hold it. You can't hold it long. If you hold it too long, you'll pass out, right? And then you exhale, you let go of the things that are no longer serving you. So you bring in all the oxygen and your body takes what it needs, and then it has to exhale the stuff it doesn't need anymore. But you don't stop breathing there either. If you exhale and you hold it for too long, you'll pass out. So the life at the very essential level is telling us to receive what's coming and absorb the nutrients, exhale those things and let go of the things that are no longer serving you. And even in the exhale, the carbon dioxide that comes out of our mouth becomes nutrients for the plants, right? And the way the whole system is built it's fascinating. Like you, Jeff, I'm not a scientist, but I love observing how all these things are a sign, a very clear sign that there's a purpose to all of this, and it all works together in a way that we can't necessarily see, because sometimes we are just a little speck of sand on the beach, and we just feel like we're lost in the sea of sandness. But each one of us, right? Each one of us has a very specific, perfect design, but the design isn't static. It's not to just remain that. It's to learn and to grow and expand and to see what's possible, both for my own growth, but also for what I can provide for those who are at least in my sphere of influence.
And I hope that anybody who listens in today or in the future, a recorded session, can get some hope from our discussion, that whatever you've gone through is not the end. It's God's got a plan. You have a purpose, and heck, go to Mojo's studio. He'll help you out, right? If you need some help. I would help you out, but there's going to be somebody there, and we just hope that you take. I hope that you take comfort that there's more good to come.
Absolutely. Yep. And I think two important G words, well, three important G words to take into 2024: gratitude, grace, and generosity. Gratitude for all that we've received. The fact that we're having this conversation means that whatever fires have raged through our life, we have survived, right? We're still standing. We're still talking. We're still growing. And then grace for the times when I was responsible for making very bad decisions that wasn't good for me or for the people around me. That's part of the learning process as well. If I just ignore it or let it go, or let it sit, it's going to rot. But if I learn and grow from that, so that I don't repeat those over and over again, those patterns, as we talked about at the very beginning, then grace is very helpful in terms of forgiving ourselves and forgiving others. And then generosity. What can I give? What can I give from all that I've received? I'm so grateful for the blessings in my life, from my friends like Jeff and others and his family, and for the influence and input that his mother had in my life while she was here on this earth. So I'm the recipient of so many blessings. I want to be grateful for that, gracious, and then generous as well. And if I can get those three G's working, 2024 can be very positive.
Now, if you want to go 4G, you just go Jeff. That's a great G, Jeff. And I don't know where 5G will take you, but you can call AT&T or somebody. They'll tell you where 5G will go.
Right. Might cause brain cancer. I don't know. It's according to the conspiracy theorists. Oh, thank you, Jeff. As always, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your friendship, your wisdom. I know that much of your wisdom comes from your experience, from your reading, also from your relationship with God and with a family around you who love you. And it's just a pleasure that we get to continue this Waldorf and Statler relationship, and be the curmudgeons throwing tomatoes at the people down on stage at this stage of our life. Bless you, my friend. Until next time. Till next time.
All
Bless
right.
you.
Bye.